Hello everyone, good day to all of you. I wanted to give a review today of the Manta Defense TAC-Wrap as I have on this AR here. I've had this for a little bit over a month now and I've been testing it, and it is pretty good, but it does have, pretty much as usual with, it seems like a lot of the Manta stuff, it does have a little bit of a weirder installation process and just kind of how it's set up. So I'm going to go ahead and cut actually to the table so you can see things a bit closer. I want to talk about how this comes and how I did install it. I think a very good point to start on with this TAC-Wrap is to talk about what you get in the package itself when you order it. So to start, if you get this, this is how the TAC-Wrap itself is going to go and show up. And if you get this rail cover here at the top, this will actually be separate. So do just keep that in mind. It'll come in this pretty overpackaged bag, and what you get in this bag, so you have the banner, kind of this paper here that shows the TAC-Wrap installed on a rifle itself. This also doubles as the instructions on how to install it, which I would highly recommend following. They wrote these quite well. There is a few things I will touch on that can help during your installation, and also a few things that are a little weird that took me a bit to realize. But we'll touch on that in a sec. I'm going to go through the rest of what you get here. You also get this assortment of clips. Notice that each of these is a different size across, so when you install this, you're going to just kind of visually gauge it and take whichever is as close as possible as you can get to your handguard, while not being so narrow that you can't install it properly. So for me, I actually did go with the thinnest ones possible. That's what I have on here now. But the way that this works, for example, if you were going to install this, which I'm not going to show because I already do have this installed and I'm not taking it off because it's a little bit tricky because I have this vibratided in and a few other things with these acorn nuts that I'll discuss in a second. But if you look here, that's just how it goes. You'll just take two of the matching sizes of these crossbar kind of clips and they just sit on your Picatinny. And then you also have two just threaded steel rods, and that's what the TAC-Wrap itself wraps onto, and that's what you also run through these clips, just like that. So you got that. You'll also have 4 acorn nuts, which I was kind of mentioning already, which are installed here. And then also you will get, now this is the one weird part that took me for a bit to even realize. This is what they are referring to as lubricant. But you can very clearly see this as hand sanitizer on it. So right here, I believe is on step 3. It does say to apply a generous amount of Manta lube inside one side channel. So when they say that, they are actually referring to hand sanitizer, like actually apply hand sanitizer to the inside of here. I'm guessing the reason for that is that some lubricants could potentially, if they're mixed with something else, could potentially maybe eat away at this rubbery sort of material. So this hand sanitizer, it works well. Just keep in mind once it dries and evaporates, which will be pretty quick, that this will be pretty well stuck on. But I guess they kind of wanted that, engineered it that way perhaps, which is why they recommend using hand sanitizer. And all their other products too, just as a little bit of a side note, they pretty much always ship them with hand sanitizer. This is the second time I'm doing a review on a Manta product, and the first time I did, they sent just a different kind of almost like a medical looking bag of hand sanitizer, and I could not figure out what it was for. It's for installation. That is what they're referring to with the lubricant. So when you install this, you'll just, I put on a lot through this entire channel on the side of these, the wrap itself, which just comes as a flat just sheet pretty much, and just takes whatever form you wrap it around. Just kind of like that, as you can see right there. As I said, not taking it off because of the difficulty in doing so. But you can kind of, it's very straightforward installation instructions. The two things I wanted to touch on about installation were what I already mentioned about this being the lubricant. The other thing I wanted to mention is in their installation instructions, they do recommend using a thread locker of some sort. I would recommend to either just dry fire practice a bunch or do live fire, either way, but put this where you think you'll want it, but don't actually snug it down yet. And once you're sure that you want it where you really want it, then tighten down these acorn nuts. And I would recommend applying Vibratite, but it really doesn't matter. Just do apply some thread locker because these are just acorn nuts. They will unthread otherwise. And one thing on this is a pretty narrow handguard. One thing that might make it easier, I used a wrench because I couldn't fit, a socket would work pretty well here, but you would need one that is very deep as well as very narrow. And that was the difficult part for me, because if you look at how close the acorn nuts are to the Picatinny on the top itself, I didn't have enough clearance with any of the sockets that I had on hand to actually get it to fit in there. Just not enough clearance. So if you do run into that same problem, you can just use a crescent wrench, just an adjustable one. Very time consuming if you have to do it that way, but it works. Once you get it on though, it stays, and it is very comfortable. But the installation, this has kind of been a recurring theme with it seems like a lot of the Manta products that I've been trying out, is that they tend to be just a kind of weird, overly complicated installation. And again, it's not that difficult really either, but just for what it is, being kind of a rail cover, it's just a little bit much, I would think. So I think showing kind of how it came from the factory and a little bit on how it's installed will help to understand the rest of the review as kind of like almost like a primer. One other thing I did want to touch on these kind of weird rods, as I mentioned, that are odd to install. One advantage these actually do have, they're not just an annoyance, is if you do need to take off your handguard for any reason and you mount this behind your gas block, one advantage is on a narrow handguard where you may otherwise have to remove rail covers or anything else that you attach to the M-lock because it's sticking in so much. On this, since everything's on the exterior, you don't need to bother. This just will slide off nicely. So that is an advantage of the otherwise pretty weird system of having two steel rods going through and wrapping this grip, or however you would want to call this, rail protector around the handguard. But as for how this has been holding up for me with my usage of it, it actually has been quite nice so far. I found this to be very comfortable. As with all other Manta products, if you've tried any of them, they all have the same sort of texture to them. It's a very rubbery, and I'm not sure if it's actual rubber, but very rubbery, sort of springy feel that is very comfortable. And I have noticed on this, when I'm shooting quite a bit of rounds, that it does help a lot to keep the heat down, which they advertise quite a bit, but it does actually work quite well. Now this does take up quite a bit of room as well. You might be maybe concerned about if you want to run a foregrip with this and you maybe want to mount it like right where you have this. I have seen some other people cut into this and make a hole just to clear the foregrip and then wrap this around it. I'm not totally sure. Of course, I haven't done that myself. It would probably be fine because I did end up doing that to this top cover rail panel on the Picatinny, but I'm not sure if it would maybe, since this is being stretched just a little bit, that if it would maybe weaken it up, but that is an option. You could cut into this ever so slightly to put a foregrip there if that's something you want to do, or really mount anything else that you want to put there. On the note of the top cover, now this is a little strange how they sent this. For me, actually, it was ever so slightly too large. So they sell an actual Picatinny rail guard, and then they sell this, they call it the top cap, for use with the TAC-Wrap. So I would have assumed that it would have been perfectly sized, but mine was actually ever so slightly too large, and it wouldn't fit with this rear crossbar right here. So I did end up trimming it. You can see it's not the most perfect cut. It's a little bit crooked, and these are pretty interesting though, and they make it pretty straightforward to see where to cut. These actually have lines on the bottom here that mark where you can cut. The reason that they do that is because these have wire brackets almost in them, just spaced every so often, which really helps to have it grip to the rail. And I've never had these come off, and you can kind of push these brackets into place so that it'll conform even to a Picatinny rail that's maybe a little bit out of spec. One thing you might notice, if you look here, I'm not sure how well the camera will pick this up, but these are very different colors. So if you are wanting to have like a perfectly color matched rifle, in the case of the TAC-Wrap itself, I bought this in OD green actually. Kind of in certain lighting will look more tan, but this is a very good match with the rest of the furniture I have here. For example, I have a BCM Gunfighter pistol grip in their green color, as well as a Viltor stock in green as well. But both the top cap here and the TAC-Wrap itself from Manta are supposed to both be green, but you can see they are very different. If you are interested in the other colors, I have noticed that I don't own any other TAC-Wraps in other colors, but at least for the other rail panels and all that I have, their FDE especially is very consistent. This is an FDE Cerakoted rifle right here. And you can also see the similarity between their M-LOK rail panels, for example, which I have right here, and the top Picatinny cover here. So I think you're going to be fine if you're worried about the color and you go with either the FDEs I showed or with their black. You should be all good, but it does seem like there's probably going to be some variance as far as the green colors are concerned. But as for how this has been holding up for me, I really haven't had any issues with it. As I kind of alluded to at the start, I didn't immediately tighten this and apply thread locker and everything at the very start, because I was thinking I might want to move this ever so slightly back, and I didn't. I ended up leaving it where I originally mounted it. But you definitely do need to make sure to have some sort of thread locker, because you're not going to be able to torque these acorn nuts down as much as you would want for them to not move, because then you're going to bite into this polymer, the crossbars here, and very potentially crack it because you're over torquing it. So definitely go light on the torque and just use some thread locker or Vibratite. Either way is going to work fine. But I think a very important point to talk about is a comparison on how does this TAC-Wrap really hold up compared to other grip panels or M-LOK rail guards that are out on the market. So it doesn't really do anything too special in my opinion. I mean, it is a full wrap, but you can achieve that as well if you just get normal, for example, the BCM or the Slate Black Industries, just M-LOK rail covers and just line wherever you want to hold, just fully line it with M-LOK rail guards instead. I mean, I kind of did the same on here. I just have one here and I have some on the other side as well, and it's quite comfortable. I don't really have an issue with it, and it is cheaper as well. So if you're really concerned about having a full wrap for whatever reason, I personally don't really think you would need it, but if you're looking for that, then this is absolutely a good choice. I believe that this is about 50, and then the top cap here is another 10 or 20. So it is kind of pricey for what it is. I know you could get a few packs, for example, of the BCM rail guards for a lot less. Generally, when I've seen these used just on other photos and people talking about them, it's usually, they do have a certain look to them. They certainly look interesting. I saw one comment on different videos doing about Manta, mentioning that these kind of can give it like an FNC sort of look if you are into that and you mount it all the way back here, kind of like that classic Cold War look. So it can look cool, but as far as if you actually want this for the practicality of it, it will work. It doesn't really do anything special either, and it's kind of awkward to install. So personally, I think you're better off getting just some regular rail guards. I think that the M-LOK rail guards that I keep bringing up that Manta makes are actually really, really well made. They're also a little bit difficult to uninstall. They're easy to install, but depends on what you're looking for on that. But I guess really this is kind of a vibe, but yeah, it just doesn't really do anything too special. So really just depends on what you're looking for. It is decent, and that's really about it. While I was editing this, I was thinking more, and actually one place where I do think that this TAC-Wrap would particularly shine, even more so than the other rail covers that I've been talking about, is with full auto or suppressed use when you're doing very long strings of fire. Since it is a full wrap, especially when the handguard would get that hot in those sort of circumstances, it would, I think, do a lot better. But that is a very extreme case, but I do think that is one just particularly use case where it would work. But I do also want to mention, I think that's a very niche use case as well, and it's not one that you would be able to do all that often. First off, because ammo is just so expensive, and even if it wasn't, and if it was back in the good old days, you'd be burning out your rifle pretty quick if you always shot it like that. But it's worth mentioning, and there is some benefit to using it in those sorts of circumstances, I do think. But let me know if you have any other questions on this that maybe I forgot to answer, or if you have any other questions on anything else I brought up on this video, or just comments in general. I always love to hear them. And I hope to see you all in the next one. Take care.